Hello and welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley. This is another Shropshire church. This is the Church of St Catherine, Tugford. Tugford is one of the shrunken villages in the Shropshire Hills. It's located in Corvedale at the foot of Brownclea Hill. It's an area that was deeply affected by the Black Death because it is marginal agricultural land. It's great for sheep farming, but it's not so great for arable farming or even for farming cattle, and that was especially so in the 14th century. The church has Norman origins, and we'll see some of those as we go around. It's been extended in the 13th century and altered in the 14th century, and it reached its current appearance in the 19th century. We've still got these nice ochre-washed walls, the plaster ceiling. We'll see some medieval benches and also 19th century pulpit. The Oxford movement passed Tugford by, and so we have a nice example here of a pre-ecclesiological church. The other thing that's still here is the front, or seems to be the front of the rood loft, and we'll see that as we go around. And you say, well, where is it? It's not behind. No, it's not. It's been moved, but it's still in the church. So we'll have a look around and point out the important and interesting features. So here we are at the back at Tugford. There is a gallery. Won't go up there, it's a bit windy in terms of staircase. It's got a very sort of cottage or farmhouse type staircase. It's not anything grand. It's been put together by the local carpenter. The benches have the same look to them, but they've been put together by a local carpenter in the late Middle Ages, perhaps the late 15th, early 16th century. The font is quite similar to that Abden, a little bit bigger and a little bit more elaborate, but that is again 12th century. The walls, this ochre wash is what it would have been like really in the 18th century and through the 19th century. Pulpit, of course, is a 19th century example, quite tall sort of thing that's quite often a more low church or evangelical incumbent would want as a pulpit. I think you can see it's even got its, it's now converted to electricity, but it's even got its old oil lamp that would have been lit in the evenings, that would have illuminated the minister's Bible and sermon notes as he preached. The forward pews are 19th century. They replace box pews that were removed, but the older benches at the back, what we would think of as pews, but thought as benches back then, have been retained. Here we have a memorial in memory of Thomas Clinton, native of Tugford, who by his will, dated the 13th day of June 1815, left a sum of £100 to the minister and church wardens of Tugford in trust that they do give the interest of the said £100 equally to 10 poor widows of the said parish on St Thomas's Day and Lady Day forever. N.B. The money is secured in the 5% Navy stock in the names of the church wardens and their successors. I wonder what it's like now. Here is what I think is the front of the old rood loft. You can see here you've got this, the only place in the church that you've got this kind of medieval Gothic type detailing. The pulpit, as you can see, is much simpler, so that does look older. So that, I think, is the old rood loft. Here we have a 13th century lance. You can see its little trefoil type top there. We've got here one of the original 12th century windows. See how tiny they are, and they had to be. Here we have grateful memory of the 11 men from Tugford Parish who served in the Great War, especially John Lawley, Charles Rowe and Thomas Pugh, who fell in their country's service. And then we've got the memorial of the Second World War to Thomas Henry Farrington, Royal Marines, died 12th November 1942 when HMS Hecla was lost by enemy action in the Atlantic during the Second World War. So there, what you'd be looking at would be, of course, escorts in the Battle of the Atlantic and trying to deal with U-boats. And of course it was a dangerous business. As the pulpit again, this would be a late 13th century window. See the plate tracery as it's known. You can see it's been cut out of a single piece of stone. And there's another one related to it. The organ is a chamber organ. It's the sort of thing that would be in a country house, but of course it's quite adequate for a little church like this. We have a very nice set of 17th century communion rails, and beyond the 17th century communion table. And it is a table rather than anything else. So although there is evidence of some, I mean, actually no, this is early 18th century, it's dated 1716, Titus Watts Clark gave this rail. There's some evidence of the Oxford movement, and one of the things is this, pushing the table back against the wall like this, but it's very minor. You can see there's no figurative stained glass, just a few panels up there, a bit of old medieval stuff. Reverend John Morgan, M.A., 21 years rector of this parish, died 1822, aged 54. And over here we have a memorial to the Reverend Hugh Pugh, rector of this church for 58 years, died 1722. And also the Reverend Thomas Pugh, M.A., his son, who died in 1748. Again, Welsh names. We're not very far from Wales, and sometimes if Welsh clergy couldn't find a living in Wales, they would come to England, and not even if they could. Often English livings were more, shall we say, rewarding financially, if nothing else. The old rood beam. And the thing is, we may complain about them, but the reality is that a man has to live, and if a man's got a wife and children, saying, oh, you have to have a poorly paid post in Wales that you can barely survive on, is not very helpful for him. So it's very interesting. I'll just do a date on it. It's by, let's see who made the organ, Daniel Gray of Ely Place, St George's Road, Southwark. So, see at the front here we've got these painted, gilded, carved pipes. Of course they're not real pipes, the real pipes are all on the inside. Very, very simple. It's all you need in a little church like this. And quite often I say these things are made for country houses, but they end up being given to a church that doesn't have an organ. And some churches had barrel organs. I'm not sure I've done a video of church with a barrel organ, but one of these days, because barrel organs, well, they were what you had if you didn't have anyone to accompany your singing. You had a barrel organ, an automatic organ. At the back here we have this of course now got things resting on it. This is the beer. You can see the folding handles, very typical Shropshire type of beer, this one. Probably 18th century, might be slightly earlier. So that is the inside here at Tugford. Before we go all the way outside, this is the south doorway. It's a good piece of Norman work, quite high quality. You see the dogtooth moulding there, and you've got these columns with their carved capitals. Both are different. That's how Norman work is. You've got these little heads either side, one very, very crude and one a little bit more sophisticated. And inside this quite plain and primitive even church porch, and the door there. And so here we are outside at St Catherine's, Tugford. It's a very picturesque church. It used to be rendered at one point. A lot of the most of the render has come off, revealing the stonework underneath and this quite brown stone. It's not the same as the lighter stone elsewhere in Shropshire. It's obviously local stone quarried locally, brown Clee Hill. Nice tower. The lower part is medieval Norman, and the upper part is 18th century, and there used to be a wooden belfry on top, and that's been replaced with the current stone structure. And you can see very clearly the difference in stonework. And then this porch that is partially timber, but wooden side, well, it's stone sides with a timber bit at the front. So have a look around. I'll point out again some of the interesting features here. St Catherine is quite a big church, especially such a small village. You can see that there was hope that this would be a bigger village, and hopes that were never quite realised. Next door, that's the old parsonage that has at some point had been somewhat extended. Obviously now a private house, as so many of these old buildings are, largely because they weren't really suitable for changed circumstances, it was felt, in the 20th century. We can see there's a Norman tympanum on the priest's door there, and there's a tomb recess, so we'll have a closer look at those once we're through this rather overgrown churchyard. And here you see the slope of the hill there. This will be at the top of the village, and the village then would have been to the north of the church, although the church still faces south. Very, very common. You were supposed to have a south-facing church. That blocked opening there, that would have been access to the rood loft, from the outside in this case. It's interesting. You can see it in a number of other churches around here. Here's the tympanum. A tympanum is this stone, normally semicircular. In this case it's got a bit of a point to it, but it does appear to have been moved from somewhere else. You can also see there the bees there are bees nesting there in the wall, making honey inside the church wall. And this has obviously been taken from somewhere else and has been reshaped slightly. Almost certainly a Norman north doorway. There is a tomb recess, that appears to be 13th century. Someone important was buried here. We don't know who it was. But clearly, and see on the other side there's some more tomb recesses there, clearly this was a church where important people were buried. So there's quite a good family, and the stonework here is very good, almost ashlar quality stonework here, very different from the rubble elsewhere. And of course this is why you have this render that is then painted white. It's to give the impression of ashlar stonework. Little stream bubbling away down there. You can see here there's the north side, and these three tomb recesses there, clearly of two different dates. The older one is the closer one here. That would be early 13th century, and then later on in the 13th century you've got these, and you can see here render, and this would have been whitewashed to give the impression that this was high quality ashlar stonework. You can see there's a ball up there. There's a good set of bells here. The first time I visited here, a good number of years ago now, they were ringing the bells as the north doorway, which measured it up, but certainly there's good reason to think that the tympanum was there. You can see that tiny little Norman window, and compare and contrast with those bigger windows. And there, that tower, you can see that it's the top two stages that are 18th century, and the lower part is medieval. And again, it's this business of picturesque, though a wooden belfry would be, repairs cost. And so, as I see here, it's rubble stonework, and of course it's covered over to make it look as though this is posh ashlar like the East End stonework. And lovely wild flowers filling the churchyard. Very, very lovely building here. So the tower, obviously, this massive great yew tree. You often find massive great yew trees near churches for a variety of reasons. And being there, I suspect that originally that would have been part of the churchyard, and it's become part of the vicarage garden. After all, why not? The vicarage needs a garden, and would have needed less of a garden in the Middle Ages for various reasons. So there's the hill up above the church. There's a lovely little place, a bit of old farm there, and these table tombs and old graves here in the churchyard. And there's the porch. You can see how the porch impinges upon that 13th century window, which tells something about the age of the porch versus the age of the window. And then to the north there's the old village green, which is now privately owned and is used for grazing sheep, but the owner allows access to the church because otherwise there's no way anyone would be able to get to the church. that is St. Catherine's, Tugford. The dedication, of course, is St. Catherine of Alexandria, the martyr, the Egyptian martyr for whom the Catherine wheel firework is named. She was, according to the legends, they at least tried to do her in, to martyr her, using a wheel. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and God bless you and keep you until next time.